Why are you no longer friends with your best friend? Some crazy family drama. My mother is a real estate agent and sold their house. A few years later, the new owners sold the house for $100,000 more after fixing the house up, getting rid of the smoke smell, and the market price increased. When my best friend's mother found out, she tried to sue my mother for devaluing the house when she sold it for them, told the whole town my mother is a witch, etc. etc. Fun times.
Sounds like your friend's mom was really feeling the heat over that house sale. It's wild how quickly things can turn into drama in a small town. Your mother just did her job, but people tend to blame others when they don't get what they expect. The whole witch thing is a bit much, but I guess that's how some folks cope with losses. Makes for some interesting stories, though.
As we grew up, our interests began to differ. It's as simple as that. Edit. Just for clarification and in response to a lot of the replies, this was one of those things in my life, and I assume many others as well, that simply happened. There is no fault. There is no start, but there was an end. It just happened. And now looking back on it, it stinks. I'm sure everyone can relate. It's tough to slowly watch and feel a relationship grind into nothing. One year you're playing Halo 2 every day after school, going out to movies, bonfires, friends' houses, talking about which cheerleader you'll date next, going as Dumb and Dumber to a high school prom as your dates look on in horror. And now, you don't even talk.
It's hard to see friendships fade like that. You go from sharing everything to barely knowing what's going on in each other's lives. I remember a friend I used to game with every day. We had so many good times. But then life took us in different directions. It just happens. It's a bummer, but sometimes that's the way it goes. You look back and remember the good moments, even if they feel distant now.
I had a miscarriage on the morning of the day she'd booked for her baby shower. I called her thinking she'd understand why I didn't want to go. She said, "Oh my God, you'll have to drop your gift off now before everybody else arrives so I could put it on the gift table first." Ugh, this messes up my entire day. Seriously, that was the last time I ever spoke to her.
That's a tough story. It sounds really hurtful when someone can't put their friends' feelings first, especially in a moment like that. It makes you realize who really cares about you in hard times. Sometimes it's better to distance yourself from people who don't support you. It's important to surround yourself with those who understand and empathize. That kind of situation really shows the true colors of friendship.
I eventually learned she was a chronic liar, and it was more harm than good to be friends with her. She would lie about so much, even just little things. She would tell me she's moving. I'd be so sad, and then it would just eventually never happen. She turned people against me so that she was my only friend. She told me a boy I like signed my yearbook, but she signed it herself pretending to be him. She would tell people she's been horseback, riding her whole life, and competing. Meanwhile, I was the one who taught her the basics of how to ride on my own horse. It took me years to figure out how toxic she was. It was hard because she was a fun person to hang out with, but just too much crazy behind the scenes.
It's rough when you find out a friend isn't who you thought they were. I've had a similar experience. You think you're close with someone, but then you realize they're just playing games. It's confusing because the good times make you overlook the red flags. Eventually, it's clear that the friendship isn't worth the drama. It's a tough lesson, but sometimes you just have to move on for your own peace.
Because they weren't really my best friends. I've never had luck with friends. Never had a solid best friend growing up, and as I got older, my friends stopped getting in touch with me when they were doing something. I couldn't wait until I finished high school so I could make new friends in college. A couple years of college goes by and repeat the same thing again. This really screwed with my already low self-esteem when it came to friends. I was probably the problem for a lot of it because I was overcompensating, trying to make my friends like me more. Finally, after years of having flaky, unreliable friends that didn't want to hang out with me, I found a group that did. Maybe I needed to grow up some. Maybe I only click with a particular set of people. Either way, real friendships are great, and I'm glad I have the friends I do.
It's tough when you feel like you don't fit in. I get that. Many of us have had those flaky friends, and it really messes with your confidence. Finding your crew takes time, but once you find those reliable people, it makes a difference. Sometimes, it's just about connecting with the right ones. It seems like you finally found that, and that's all that matters in the end. Good to hear things change for you.
She's bipolar and has good phases and bad phases, I suppose. I don't fully understand it, so I won't pretend to know what it's like. She's an I just want to be alone phase and deleted me off of Facebook and doesn't text me anymore. I've learned over the years to just give her the space she needs and to just let her know that I do care and that I'm here if she needs.
It sounds like a tough situation. It's good that you understand her need for space. Sometimes, people just need time to sort things out on their own. Just being there for her when she's ready can mean a lot. It's a hard balance to strike, but it seems like you're handling it well, respecting her boundaries while still showing that you care.
He completely dropped off the radar. I've known him, literally, since I was born. My mom and his were in the hospital together when we were born. We've been friends since birth. A few years ago, he got a girl pregnant. She informed him that she was keeping the baby and cutting off all contact with him. There's more to the story, but that's the short version. He cracked. He sank into deep depression and went completely off the grid, and now lives somewhere in New Mexico as a blacksmith. I haven't seen him in almost 15 years, and I miss him. He's never gotten over her, and he really wants to have a relationship with his kid. I know this from his parents, but she'll have nothing to do with him. So he's basically a hermit somewhere, and I have no idea how to get hold of him. I miss him. His name's Blake, and I really do miss him.
It's tough when someone you've known forever just disappears. Sounds like Blake had a rough time with everything. That kind of situation can really mess with someone's head. Living as a blacksmith in New Mexico is a big change. It's sad he can't reach out to his kid or even get past it all. I get why you'd miss him. Hope one day he finds a way to reconnect with people who care about him.
We were living together. She decided she didn't like my boyfriend. So, when one night he and I came home at 4 a.m., we had just put on an event at a nightclub and had to clear up after etc. Totally legit reasons for coming home late, which should be allowed to do in own flat anyway. She decided to contact our landlord saying I had broken the contract by anti-social behavior, but didn't tell me this until I was called into a meeting. Up until this meeting, she was very nice and friendly to me, and I thought we could work it out. When we had the formal meeting with landlords, she totally went against me, trying to get me kicked out / or police called because me and my BF were apparently causing her to have acute anxiety. I calmly explained the reality of the situation, that she was clearly having serious mental health issues and needed some help. Couldn't blame me living my life for her own issues. The fact that she started raving and screaming really helped prove my point, and she ended up moving out. Haven't spoken since.
That's rough. It's tough when someone can't handle your presence or choices, especially when you think things are fine. Living with someone who has their own issues can create a lot of tension. You did what you could by addressing it calmly, but it sounds like she wasn't ready to hear it. It's probably for the best that you both went your separate ways. Not everyone can coexist peacefully.
I wasn't as interesting as weed. I got a bit pissy about the fact I was never invited out anywhere, and I realized that when we were together, all he / they would talk about was smoking weed and other grass-related jokes that got so boring so quickly. I guess I got a bit too much for them, and they decided to make me look like a complete fool, using other people to tear apart my blog at the time, and using everything I ever wrote as a personal attack. Now, my only best friend is my husband. I have a hard time trusting people now, though.
It sounds like you had a tough experience with friends that weren't really friends. It's frustrating when you're left out and then treated poorly. Sometimes people don't realize their jokes or interests can push someone away. It's good that you found a solid relationship with your husband now, but I get how trust can be hard after that. It's a lesson learned, I guess.
She had 2 dogs that were always well cared for, walked regularly, etc. Then she moved in with a boyfriend who didn't like dogs. She chained up her dogs in the backyard and basically just ignored them from then on. She didn't even bother to go outside to feed them. She would throw their kibble out the kitchen window onto the ground next to the doghouse and only went out a couple of times a week to fill the water dish. I call the SPCA, but since the dogs had shelter, food, and water, there was nothing they could do. I've always been baffled by people who are willing to harm children or animals for the sake of a boy/girlfriend.
It's pretty sad what some people prioritize in relationships. She had those dogs for a while and then just changed overnight. I get that love can cloud judgment, but neglecting pets for a partner is a whole other level. It's surprising how easily some people forget about responsibilities when they think they're in love. I just can't wrap my head around it. Hope those dogs find a better home someday.
She lied to me constantly, stole from me, made everything about her, and always downplayed things going on in my life. She used to also criticize my relationship relentlessly, but whatever new guy she was dating that week was obviously her soulmate, and they were going to get married, etc. When I got engaged to the same guy I was dating when I knew her, she texted me saying congrats and added, "I knew you'd get married, LOL." Even after cutting her out, she still needs to lie. It's insane. Can elaborate with crazy stories if they're wanted.
It's wild how some friendships can go so sideways. I had a friend like that once. Always making it all about her, never really caring about what was happening in my life. The constant criticism of my choices and her fake enthusiasm when something good happened to me just felt off. When I finally distanced myself, it was like a weight lifted. Some people just can't handle the truth.
For a pretty boring reason compared to others' posts, but we went to different colleges. She stayed at home, I went away, and when I would come home and invite her to hang out, there was always a reason why she couldn't. By the time junior year of college began, I stopped trying. I had asked her to hang out at least every other weekend that summer, and I didn't see her once. Later that year, she sent me a really long message saying that she had heard from other people that I was mad at her. I just wasn't trying anymore. I kind of brushed it all off, not really the confrontational/uncomfortable conversation type. But now I kind of wish I would have said something. We've been best friends for 8 years and did everything together. I've since moved to a new city and still get anxious about seeing her when I visit my parents.
Yeah, that kind of thing happens. You invest so much time into a friendship, and then it just kind of fades. It's awkward, too, when they reach out later asking if something's wrong. I can see how you'd feel anxious about running into her again. Sometimes it's better to be straightforward, but not everyone handles that well. It's tough to keep those connections when life pulls you in different directions.
She was the worst maid of honor ever. I brought my bachelorette party to her as she was going to school in Miami. I'm from the Northeast Coast, and she still didn't bother showing up to any of the activities. Not even a dinner or to stop by the hotel for a simple hello. She started writing the wedding speech while I was getting my dress on. She ended up getting shit-faced, and her speech was a rambling mess that people around me still joke about. She showed up to the wedding suite as my new husband and I were getting ready for bed. Was even more drunk by then. Broke a glass that cut my foot. Haven't spoken to her since. She never apologized. Pretty sure she doesn't think she did anything wrong at all.
That sounds rough. It's wild how some people can't handle important events. Like you trust someone to be there for you, and they just don't show up. The speech part is pretty awkward too. Drunk speeches can either be funny or just plain cringy. Not surprising you haven't talked since. It's a shame when friendships go like that, especially during such a big moment in your life.
Friends since second grade. We just kind of grew apart. Different maturity levels, tastes, bad habits. Both joined the military a few years after high school to do something different, 80s. Tried to maintain contact, but distance was the killer. Eventually, we both found other friends. Never wrote them off, but the friendship seemed dead. But then, when I retired from the military, we ended up 30 miles apart. First time we got back together after 10 plus years, it was the same as when we were kids. Played video games, went to the range, and managed to get yelled at.
It's interesting how friendships can fade and then pick right back up. I had a similar experience with a friend from school. We drifted apart after high school, but when we reconnected years later, it felt like no time had passed. We fell back into our old routine, just hanging out and laughing like before. Sometimes life brings people back when you least expect it. It's nice when that happens.
I guess we never stopped being friends, but my best friend died in July. I used to talk to him every day on the phone. We lived in different states, and we would talk about BS or real heavy stuff depending on what was going on in our lives. I met him my first week in college. We remained close friends when he left and after I graduated. He went to India, was getting his life on track, and then he hit a tree right after he got back. I miss him dearly, and I wish more than anything that I could just talk to him. Friends are the best. Don't take them for granted.
It's tough losing someone you care about. I can relate to that feeling of wanting to share everyday moments and deep conversations. Those memories stick with you. It's important to cherish friendships while you have them. They shape who you are and help you through life. It's a reminder to reach out and appreciate the people who matter. Time goes fast, and you never know what could happen.
We were best friends for a while until we found ourselves both single at the same time, decided to hook up with each other for about a month, and then went back to being friends with only some minor awkwardness/tension. We survived the friends with benefits, but what we didn't survive was that about a month later, I realized I was a dude and came out as transgender, and he almost immediately pushed me out of his life, and we went from talking every day to not at all. I don't think he could wrap his head around the implications of us hooking up, though in reality there are none.
It's always tricky when friendships mix with feelings. We thought we had a handle on it, but things shifted when I came out. I guess he couldn't deal with the change. It's wild how quickly connections can break, especially when identities change. It's weird not talking anymore after being so close. I still value those moments, but sometimes it feels like we're just left in different worlds now.
I was best friends with a guy since we were 11. At 18, we went to different universities expecting to see each other again during the break over Christmas, so we didn't talk to each other when we got to university. This was pre-Facebook. After 6 weeks at university, he suddenly died. He'd had a problem when he was 15 with fluid buildup in his lungs. He'd had surgery to fix the problem. My memory of exactly what the problem was are hazy since it was over 20 years ago now, but it reoccurred. The story I was told was he went to hospital since he wasn't feeling well, but it was too late and he died there. I now take my kids to visit his grave.
That's a heavy story. Losing a close friend like that is tough, especially when you had plans to reconnect. It's good that you take your kids to his grave. It probably helps keep his memory alive. Life can be unpredictable, and moments like this remind you to appreciate the people around you. It's nice that your friendship still means something all these years later.
My friend and his wife divorced. A couple years before that, they asked me to be the godfather to their son. I agreed. After they separated, he got mad at me for not cutting her off and removing her from social media. I tried to explain to him that I keep in contact with her for the purpose of checking in on my godson, to see how he's doing or needs anything for school. He told me I was a sellout and hung up on me. Haven't heard from him since that day. It's been 2 years. I tried to get in touch with him a couple of times, but he never returned my calls.
It's tough when friendships get strained over personal issues. You were just trying to look out for the kid. It's sad that he couldn't see that and chose to cut you off instead. Losing a friend over something like this is rough. It's been 2 years and you've tried reaching out but no response. Sometimes people deal with their feelings in ways that push others away. It's just how life goes sometimes, I guess.
She got both of us into a T-bone car crash because she wasn't paying attention and ran a red light. After passersby got us out of the wreck, she told me to leave and hide somewhere before the police got there, so she wouldn't be responsible for an extra person on her insurance. I had to reevaluate how much she really cared about her, and I haven't spoken to her in over a year now.
That's a rough situation. It's wild how quickly friendships can change when something serious happens. It sounds like you learned a lot about her character that day. Sometimes, people show their true colors in tough moments. It's probably for the best that you stepped away from that friendship. Trust is important, and it seems like she didn't have yours in mind. Hard lessons like that stick with you.
I got sick. Suddenly I couldn't go out. I had to be meticulous about watching what I ate and how much fluid I drank. Can't go out for lunch or coffee. I had trouble walking. If it's cold out, I don't go outside. I have a hard time keeping my house clean enough to have guests over. Also, if she ever did come over, it made her uncomfortable when I did my dialysis, which I do every 3 hours.
That sounds really tough. Dealing with sickness is hard enough without having to make all those adjustments. It can get lonely being stuck at home, especially if you can't meet friends or have them over. Managing treatments like dialysis can be a lot, too. It must be frustrating when you can't enjoy things you used to. Hope you find some moments of comfort, even in the tough times.
His wife told him that my fiancé told her that he wasn't going to be in my wedding party, and so he basically up and stopped talking to me. I confronted him and asked if something was wrong. He said if I didn't value him enough to have him at my wedding, then we basically aren't friends. I actually had really big plans for him to be in my wedding.
That's a tough situation. It seems like he took things pretty personally. Miscommunication can really mess things up. It's frustrating when you have plans, but people react in unexpected ways. Weddings can bring out strong feelings. Sometimes, it makes you realize who truly values the friendship. It sounds like he didn't see the bigger picture. It's unfortunate when friendships end like that, especially over something that could have been talked through.
He needed money, and the B2B business he was working at was giving a $5,000 headhunting fee. Calls me up and offers me a job in another state. I drop everything and move out there cause he was my best friend since we were in the 7th grade. So I trusted him to look out for my best interests. After a few weeks, it became apparent that I was nowhere near qualified, but I busted my ass and made it work. Found out after a couple of months, he just wanted me to sleep with his wife so he could divorce her without guilt. 6 months later, the business folds when the internet bubble pops, and I am moving my family back to live with my in-laws while I start over from scratch. That was about 15 years ago. We haven't spoken since.
That's a rough situation. You trust your friend, make a big move, and then find out his real intentions. It's wild how things can get messy so quickly. Losing a job and having to start over is tough. It makes you rethink friendships and who you can rely on. Sometimes you learn the hard way about loyalty and trust. It's been a long time, but some scars stick around.
She couldn't keep a secret. Literally, not at all. Something happened to me a while back, and I confided in her, and she helped me out, and I told her not to say anything, and she agreed. About a year later, I was talking to someone at school that I hardly knew, and he brought it up. We were talking in a group, so everyone else was like, "Oh yeah, I know about that," and started talking about it. She even made up parts to make it sound worse than it was. When I confronted her about it, she said she thought it was really funny and wanted to share the laughter with the rest of the school. She can't even keep secrets when it comes to her boyfriend. She talks about everything, even something that would be horribly embarrassing for him if he knew she told me. Essentially, I couldn't tell her anything that mattered, or she would throw me into the bus just for a good laugh. Edit and end.
It's wild how some friends just can't keep their mouths shut. I had a similar situation where I trusted someone with my stuff, and they turned it into a joke for the whole group. Like we were supposed to have each other's backs, but it felt more like betrayal. It's frustrating when someone prioritizes their laughs over loyalty. Now I just keep things to myself. Lesson learned, I guess.
She blamed me for breaking her and her boyfriend up. She would constantly go out and openly flirt with guys. I would be a good friend and remind her of her boyfriends. One night, I texted her BF to tell her to come home, as she didn't listen to me. He asked where she was. She said at home. He broke up with her. Apparently, she always went out without him and hit on guys, which he hated. That was the last straw, and she blamed me. She was a selfish friend anyways. Good riddance.
Sounds like a complicated situation. It's tough when friends don't see their own flaws. You tried to help, but it's hard to change someone who isn't ready. It's funny how the blame shifted to you, though. Sometimes people just don't want to take responsibility for their actions. I guess that's the reality of friendship. Not everyone values loyalty the same way. Just move on, I suppose.
I just fail completely at having friends. Making them is easy, trying to keep them is easy, but if I don't actively try to not push people away, I push people away. I think I'm not doing it purposefully, that it's something I do subconsciously, but I'm not sure. I have a friend right now who simply don't let me push him away, and at the same time, he doesn't force himself on me too much. I don't think he knows how happy I am for that. But for everyone else, I have simply pushed them away.
It's tough when you notice that pattern. Having a friend who understands you makes a difference. Sometimes, just knowing someone is there, even from a distance, helps. It's not easy to recognize your own behavior, but it sounds like you're aware of it now. Maybe focusing on what makes that friendship work could help with others. It's good to have that one person who gets it, even if others drift away.
Lies, lies, lies. Everything he said was a lie. I tolerated it, but it got worse and worse. Calling him out on a lie was the end of the world for him. He was disrespectful to everyone we came in contact with, self-centered and rude to anyone and everyone. I couldn't stand how he treated those around him and finally got sick of it.
It's tough when a friend constantly lies and disrespects others. I had a similar experience once. I kept making excuses for this person, thinking maybe they'd change. But it just got worse. They didn't care about anyone but themselves. Eventually, I had to cut ties. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary to protect my own peace. Sometimes, you just have to let go of toxic relationships.
My BFF in high school was someone I thought would be my friend for life. We fell into friendship fast and hard and went through tough family stuff. It changed when I got my first boyfriend. Suddenly, she was acting out and being jealous. She never had a boyfriend, and mine was very, very nice and cute, and she badmouthed me a lot. She tried to get me to gain weight like her by giving me sweets and pushing junk food on me. She got mad when I went to the mall with another girl she didn't know who asked for my help buying a prom dress, and my BFF wasn't going to prom, and I was. There was something always a little off, like how she was possessive of me. When she moved on to college, I stopped talking to her. Now that I've seen Orange is the New Black, where Natasha Lyonne talks about high school girls who fall in love with their best friends, it really made me wonder.
Friendships can change a lot over time. It's strange how jealousy can creep in, especially when one person starts dating. Your experience with your BFF shows how possessiveness can lead to tension. It's interesting to think about those dynamics, especially with the context from shows like Orange is the New Black. Sometimes, moving on from a friend is just what you need for your own peace.
Probably gonna be buried, but oh well. I've been friends with my best friend since I was in 3rd grade. What brought us together was our shared interest in video games and the fact that we're practically neighbors. While we're still friends, we don't have the same camaraderie that we shared years ago. Since high school, we went sort of on our own separate ways. He hangs out with other people, and he spends more time with his girlfriend than with me. Looking back, that was one of the worst feelings I've ever experienced. Seeing the distance grow between you and your best friend is utterly terrible, especially knowing that no matter how hard you try, your relationship with him won't ever be the same. But that's part of life, and it's one of the few things I've managed to come to terms with.
It's tough when friendships change like that. I had a similar situation with my childhood friend. We used to hang out all the time, but as we got older, life just took us in different directions. He got into sports, I focused on school, and before we knew it, we were barely talking. It feels weird to lose that connection, but sometimes that's just how it goes. You learn to accept it over time.
Oh boy, he was a douche. This was in middle school. Basically, he talked about me behind my back about everything I did. Also, the worst part is he made a lie that I told everyone that he had sex with his girlfriend, which was false. To make matters worse, turns out the girl he claimed was his girlfriend really wasn't. He lied that they had constant sex and always made out, and it was a huge lie that even made the girl KO him, which was pretty funny to see. Our friend lied about girlfriend and fucking her, and she knocked him out.
That sounds like a messy situation. It's wild how middle school drama plays out. It's funny how people get caught in their own lies. You'd think he would have learned something from that, getting knocked out in front of everyone. Just goes to show how quick rumors can spread and how some people just dig their own graves. I hope he changed after that experience and stopped being such a jerk.
She actively cut me out of her life after 10 years of me thinking we were friends. Apparently, it was about 2 years of friendship and 8 years of her hating me without saying anything, according to her. I found out later on, after a suicide attempt or 3 on her part, that she is mentally ill and her family knew for a long time, and though I knew too, I had no idea. She still won't forgive me for things I apparently did, but we are on speaking terms again. So I consider that a success. That's all we're ever going to have now. So at least being able to say hi to her when she walks her dogs is something, even if it's not friendship.
That's a tough situation. Spending years thinking you have a solid friendship, only to find out it was different for her, must have felt really confusing. It's good that you can at least say hi now. Sometimes just having a connection, even if it's not what it used to be, can be a small win. Healing takes time for both sides, especially with everything she's been through.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.